What do you
error.
want to do?
Well, the first one will be the October 7th, is that it? Regular meeting. There was one error, the voting failed to be recorded for trick or treat. That's been corrected. Now, is there a motion to approve as corrected the minutes from October 7th?
So moved.
Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Have we had time to look at the October 9th special meeting minutes?
Yes.
Were there any additions or corrections?
But no, I know.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Clifford? Sorry.
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And finally, the October 28th special meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read those?
Yes, I approve we accept those minutes of October 9th.
October 28th?
Or 28th, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Ralph?
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the warrants and payroll time sheets.
So moved. Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the transfer of interest to the respective funds?
So moved.
Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Clifford?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Chair will entertain a motion to transfer the monthly amount allotted from the general fund to the police fund operating.
Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes. Yes.
Ralph?
And could we have a motion to transfer the monthly allotment from the general fund to the street department grant matching fund?
Motion. Second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Susan will be here, but since we've got quite a bit on the agenda, I think we'll go on. John, are you ready?
Absolutely.
John Bell is here from the aggregation.
How are you? Not bad at all. How are you, man?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, I'm not bad. I'm just getting older every day. Other than
I
that.
don't think that'll change.
So I came for a couple reasons tonight. Would you rather me stay at my seat back there, or is it okay?
No, please stay up here so we can get you one.
So as some of you are aware, because I see some familiar faces and then I see a couple new faces, a few years ago the village entered into their electricity contracts and their natural gas contracts through me. My company's called Bell Power. I broker on a large broker network called Integrity Energy. I don't work for Integrity. I don't ride for anybody's brand. And when we did that, the village had an aggregation for the residences, for the residentials and the small businesses, that there was a lack of congruence between the expiration of the villages, in other words, your actual village properties that you owned. There was about a 10-month, 12-month, it was actually an 11-month difference between the time that your contracts expired for the village before the actual aggregation came into effect. So the village had to make a decision about purchasing electricity and natural gas for their contract renewal. And then after that, the village did an aggregation with me, which put us in a situation where all the villagers would have the opportunity to purchase the electricity on the same contract. And so as we come up on, we're about 6 months away right now from the village's natural gas and electric contract. And when I say the village, I don't mean the aggregation. I mean the village proper, in other words, the village entity.
The governmental.
The the governmental contract is coming up in 6 months. And we expect some upturns in the electricity, but we've had some downturns in the natural gas, and natural gas governs the price on electricity because it's such a major part of the recipe that generates the electricity. So during that time frame, I wanted to come to y'all and propose to you that we do instead of doing a 3-year renewal on the electricity this time like we did before, I want to propose to y'all that we do a 12-month renewal on the electricity. For a couple reasons. It used to be that the 12-month was the most expensive contract that we could sell you, and the 36-month was the cheapest. But because they're anticipating a rise in the electricity cost, it's inverted now. Now the 12-month is cheaper, and the farther you go out, the longer they're committed to you, the more expensive the electricity's getting. So the reason that I say this is, the reason that I'm suggesting the 12 months to you guys, is because if we do 12 months, then that contract will end at the same time that the village's aggregation comes up for renewal. And I don't know how many of you remember or not, but in a higher wholesale market, we cut 18% out of the village's residential electricity rate on the last aggregation. We went from 6.3 cents to 5.6 cents in a higher wholesale market. We doubled the number of people that participated in this last aggregation. And in doing so, when they priced the aggregation to us last time, they were forced to price the aggregation to us based on the amount of electricity that the village residents had on the previous aggregation. You guys all follow that? In other words, they looked at how many people were on the aggregation, how many kilowatt hours got used during that thing, and they priced it according to that. Well, this new aggregation has used twice the amount of electricity that the first one did, because we have twice as many participants in it. So they were anticipating that we would use 1.5 million kilowatts per year on this contract. This contract is using 3 million kilowatts per hour. I say all that to say this. I think that, well, I don't think, I'm certain that adding the roughly 560,000 kilowatt hours that the village, because you have so many meters that are separate, each one of your meters would qualify for the aggregation. So if we do the 12-month, because this aggregation doubled in size this time, when they price it again, you guys are going to get the benefit as a government entity by being able to participate in your own aggregation for the first time. And if you go back to the minutes of the meetings when I was here before, and I'm sure that's probably not easy to do, but I suggested to you then that we would try and make an attempt to put the village in a position to enjoy the rate that comes from that aggregation. Because your present rate right now is 5.89, and that was the rate that came back when we sent it out to all the companies to price. I looked at, and I don't have custom pricing back, but I have matrix pricing right now that's 12 months at 5.69, which is almost what the village aggregation is right now. And so for that 12-month period, you guys would have the rate basically that the village aggregation has. But what this will do for you by doing 12 months instead of me coming in and saying, hey, let's do another 36-month contract, is when that aggregation comes, now you guys have the ability to look and say, okay, we use 500,000 kilowatts. Can we custom price that and get a better price in the custom market, or are we better on the aggregation? You follow me?
Yes.
Because I told you back then when we talked, I wanted to be able to put you in a position to have more choices when it came time, more options.
So we can look at both those
So
alternatives.
when we get to that point in the road, because you guys use a significant amount of electricity, at that point you'll have the ability to either say, yeah, I'd like to be a part of the aggregation because the rate's better than we can get in the custom markets, it's better than the matrix markets, or no, I actually like the matrix market or the custom market. What it does is it gives me 3 options for pricing you guys as a government entity, because before, really all we had was just to go out there to the matrix pricing. This way I'm gonna have 3 different options for you guys to look at when we get to 2021. But your current contract is gonna expire in May of 2020. And when it expires in May of 2020, if you do a 12-month agreement, it ends in April of 2021, and your aggregation as a village is set up to expire in May of 2021. So you're gonna have 1 month there where you would be in what's called a holdover rate with your current supplier. So for that 1 month, you may have, or whoever the supplier is that we picked for the 12 months, you may have 1 month with them that was higher than the other 12 months because you're actually going to go for 13 months on that thing to give yourself all those options. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions?
How long would that last, whatever we choose in 2021?
Again, it really is going to boil down to how long you want the rate for and where the best rates are at. If you'll remember when I was here before, I stood before you and I said, you know, we can lock this rate in now, or we can wait until a month or 2 before the aggregation gets ready to start and check the rates then. As a collective group, you guys decided to lock the rate in the fall that year before it started. And so, you know, it's one of those things. I'm going to give you all the options.
But we would still have all the options.
You have all the options. I'm just trying to put you in a position where I'm growing the number of options for you that you have as we go along. Because it's at that point when I can be looking at a cross-section of each one of the markets that I can get you in the best situation. If that makes sense.
Village aggregation, does it have the same, can they also choose for different things, or are they locked into a certain time frame?
So what happens with the village aggregation, because it's exclusively custom pricing, they can go out there and see if they can purchase the electricity cheaper on their own, but it's not negotiated directly through me. They basically go out to the marketplace and try and figure out what they can get. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware, when we did the aggregation before, I mean, I put myself out there and I took a beating, and I was not unhappy about it. You know, I mean, I was surprised at what a beating I took, but I put myself out there because I want the people to contact me if they have questions and they want information. But it was interesting because
Yes, I can imagine.
you know, because I had people say to me, why'd you put yourself out there like that? You had to know people were going to do that to you. But the reality of it is that there's 1s or 2s of the people who want to make contact with me to get answers. I wanted to be available for them to get them. And so while they only have that one choice based on, now, you guys have the choices for them. When you guys chose as a government entity and they voted to allow you to set up the aggregation, we go out there to 25 or 30 different companies and see what their pricing offerings are. And so at the time at the time that we did this last aggregation, the state of Ohio had caught DP&L overcharging on supply. And so there were some people that said, hey, I can get this cheaper through DP&L than I can get it through the aggregation. But what they weren't considering was that great rate that was coming from DP&L at the time was based on the fact that the Public Utility Commission had forced them to refund money through their supply system. And that rate was going to end before this aggregation did. So what they saved probably didn't end up being a savings by the time, if they balanced it out over the duration of the aggregation. But not everybody has the ability to, they don't have that foresight to see that, you know, And I hate that part of it, but that's just the reality of it. But the other thing that's exciting for the village's aggregation is that it's doubled in size. And if we continue to bring the rates down because of the size of that thing, it will continue to increase as a benefit. So like I say, the reason I came tonight is because right now the natural gas rates are low. When the heat rates go up because of the cold, the natural gas rates are going to go up. And then we're going to be forced we just won't have as good of electric rates as we have right now to deal with.
So what we need to decide if we want to lock in right now.
Basically, what I would do at this point is you guys decide if you want to ride what you've got to the end, or if you want to try and lock in a 12-month contract that will allow you to pull up next to your own aggregation and then have the choices of where you want to be for your next long-term contract. And again, it benefits me more when you guys do long-term contracts, but I'm here to tell you about the 12 month because I think I really believe it's what's going to be best for you in the short term.
I think it'd be a lot less confusing if we all kind of, if the village aggregate and the village government kind of renewed at the same time. It would be a little easier for us to select something.
Well, and it'll be a lot easier for you to bring competition to the table too. I encourage it. I mean, I want
Because
you.
we'll have a bigger pool.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be
That's what we're talking about.
it'll be an opportunity at that time to create a bigger pool. My conversion rates with this are so high that I'd like for you to be in a situation where you bring the competition to the table.
So after that 12-month period, will they be going back to the way, or they keep changing it all the time? What's going to happen?
No, the only reason that we're doing 12 months instead of another 24 or 36 month contract is just because you have an aggregation right now that ends in May of 2021, but your government entity contract is going to end 11 months before that does. So I'm trying to put you all in a position where both of those come to an end at the same time in the future. And with that, it gives me 3 different ways to go to the market and try and get pricing for you. And it's like she was saying, we end up being in a situation where you guys, instead of doing it at separate times and trying to figure out when one is ending and the next one's starting and it turns into confusion, we'll make it all come together, and then you guys have a much larger footprint to go out and appeal to the electricity companies with and the natural gas companies. One of the things that we haven't done yet is look at aggregating the village's natural gas. And we, that'll be a different meeting for me, but I'd like to come back and talk to you guys about putting natural gas aggregation on your ballot the same way you did electricity. Because I can tell you, the Perry Township, I believe, was the township. I'm going to ask this gentleman behind me. Which township is the one that is the township offices north of 70?
North of 70?
It's north of 70. Is that Clay or is that Perry? Okay. Clay did a township aggregation for natural gas last fall, and they locked in their village natural gas rates at around 34 cents for their entire township. And so that'll put us, with natural gas starting to. It used to be that natural gas had such a broad a narrow distribution channel to get natural gas to the country. Now they've broadened that, and because they've broadened it, it's brought natural gas pricing down to where if we aggregate natural gas for your folks, some of them will see a 20 cents per 100 CCS discount or reduction in what they're paying for natural gas right now.
I think it would definitely be worth looking at. I really do.
When I go out and look at all the business natural gas that I see, and one of the businesses that I saw over there in Clay Township, it's how I found out they farm over there that's kind of noteworthy for being a proactive in the energy world. And those guys were paying almost 60 cents per CCF for natural gas when they went on to that aggregated natural gas for 34 cents per CCF. So they just about cut their natural gas bill in half. So there's a real opportunity there for that as well.
I think most of us would be interested in listening to the natural gas aggregate information.
We
Time to do that.
have some time because we have to get it on a ballot and get it supported.
Yes.
And again, just like with this previous aggregation, I don't have any problem doing, town halls or putting myself out there for the people to interrogate me or ask questions.
Appreciate that.
So,
We do. The next thing we need to do is, would anyone like to move to do the 12-month, to log in for 12 months now, and that way hours will come up the same time as the village aggregation.
I make a motion that we lock it in now.
The electricity
Yes, electricity.
for an extra 12 months at the end of our
Yes.
contract.
Get it. Even now.
I'll second. Is there a second to that?
no second.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Clifford?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Ralph?
So then what I'll do is I'll send the village's usage out
Okay.
for custom pricing, and then I have matrix pricing. I'll compare the two.
Sure.
And then at that point, I'll make contact with you and,
We'll get the numbers to
get
everybody.
the numbers to everybody and let them choose.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
your
John.
time.
We appreciate it. Representative Smith is here. Come right out here.
Oh, with the microphone.
Yes,
I'm turning
like
my back
you-
to the crowd.
Well-
So. But you're the ones that are
Yeah.
important. I guess
You
you're the
stand
ones voting,
stand
so-
over there by Cal.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
We usually have a
I'm kinda
podium
scared
there,
to
but
stand
Stand
over
here,
my
I don't know why you're not out here.
Great being back here in New Paris. Actually, if you remember, this was the first town that I had my first meet
Yes.
and greet. And when I became state representative, this was the first I think she was here. And so it's good to be back here. I'm here today, first off, just to meet everybody, to answer any questions you might have about anything that you're hearing about in Columbus, if there's any bills that have come through or laws that have been passed, anything about the budget. If you have any questions, I can take answers, or take questions about that, try to give answers. But also, you should have received an email, and the mayor's going to make sure that you get it if you haven't, about something that we're proposing through our office. As many of you probably already know, I've never been in politics before. I've been in ministry. This is 35 years of preaching for me, and I've been at the same church in Farmers for over 23 years. And I tell people, last year I had an emotional and mental breakdown. I just went crazy. While I was crazy, I thought, hey, I ought to run for politics. And and when I did, and the mayor has heard me say this, and when I did, I said, when I started running, people said, well, why are you running for politics? And I said, well, after 35 years of preaching, I wanted to get in something where everybody loves one another and gets along. And I thought politics might be that. Once again, that was not true. That was a joke. But when I was approached by some people in Columbus, saying, listen, you just need to do things. You need to name some roads. That's always a good. I said, nope, not interested. That's kind of what you would expect a politician to do. And I just said, I'm not going to start falling into that vein. Something happened back in May. I did a Memorial Day service for the American Legion in West Alexandria. And I got to present, hey, good seeing you again. I got to make a presentation there. It was just a really beautiful ceremony out in the cemetery there. I've done funerals in that cemetery. And then just a few weeks later, some of you might know the name Doug Krause. He was on city council there in West Alexandria. Yeah, he was a friend of yours. I think you mentioned that, Ralph, before. Doug Krause married into the Cole family. Austin Cole is one of the township trustees down in Israel Township. That family's been members of our church for over 20 years, so I've known Doug for over 20-something years. And Doug was, I think he was mayor, no, he wasn't mayor, he was on city council, but he was the fire chief there. And just done everything in the community. He passed away just a few weeks after that. So in that same town, when we did the Memorial Day service, and then a few weeks later, to go down 35 once again, right back to that cemetery with the fire trucks and the got me thinking, because I also had some people come in my office, and it was one of those kind of rough debates. And it was about, and this is just my personal feelings, I said, I think right now, what I feel to be the ideological left is raising another generation of young people who really don't honor maybe our heritage, whether you agree or disagree. And sometimes that also has you not giving the honor due for people who have served, not only in the military, but just serve like you all do, because as you were saying, leadership, it's so awesome, because you get free lobsters everywhere you go, and everybody loves you. You know, the only thing that stepping out in leadership does a lot of times is it gets you attacked. Because nobody goes to the manager of the restaurant when the meal is perfect. They go to the manager only when it's time to complain. And so people who have served the community like yourself, you're putting yourself out there, enduring hardship, and you don't get paid anything, we need to create an atmosphere that reminds people there are people who have put their lives on the line for us, and we should not forget it. So we have proposed for the first, no other county, it'd be the first time in the state of Ohio, to not name a road, but to create a circular, somewhat circular parkway throughout the county. Because we said the heart of Preble County, at the heart of Preble County, they have patriotism at their heart. And so this will be a circular route that's going to go throughout the county. We've talked with biking groups and said it'd be super cool. We start one place, go through. And as it goes through every major community in Preble County, we have the Historical Society, we have about 10 heads of groups here in the county, the Veteran Services, Historical Society, to talk about that route. We'll put it online and also have a leaflet that as you go through each town and past the cemeteries, who is buried there, who maybe served in the military, who maybe was highly awarded or who was killed in action, people in the communities who have done things that are memorable in that community, and just a way to create an opportunity, once again, to put in the minds of this generation, there are people who have done wonderful things in our community and should be honored and it should not be forgotten. So what that's going to entail, as you know, when naming a road, it doesn't change any of the names officially. You don't have to do anything like that, but it is just on the map. We're going to have a part of that will come through each town and village. We would need your approval for this route to be completed for the areas of roads that you control. The parkway goes through every major town and village here in New Paris, Manchester, Verona, Lewisburg, on down to West Alexandria, Camden, West Elkton, comes back up through Eaton and makes a circle here. So your part of the roads that you control in the village, it would come up Washington as it crosses over 320, comes up Washington, hits Cherry right here in downtown, and then turns and goes east. So the only portion of the roads that you would have to make a decision on if you would want to participate in this is, yes, we would allow you to ceremonially name Washington, coming north and south through downtown, and east Cherry as it heads out of town. So what that would entail is just making a decree here that, yes, we want our roads to be part of the patriotic park, the Preble County Patriotic Parkway. So, any questions about that? It's not going to cost you anything. We're going to get community groups and businesses to donate any signage that we would put up. So,
Sounds to me.
and we said that the mayor would patrol the entire area for trash. She would go over there every day. We put that in the small
I'll do
print.
that.
We put that in the small, oh yeah. So are there any questions about that? You
I
know I
don't
was
think
taking
so.
that
We
from
would
you.
just have to think of our ceremonial name for our section of it, I think, right? I mean,
It'll all be named the.
It'll all be the
Preble
Patriotic
County
Parkway.
Patriotic Parkway, yeah. So you would just approve, yeah, we want the roads that we have domain over to be part of that parkway, so.
okay. But did I hear about a pamphlet that might have something to do with
Oh,
our part of
yes.
it?
Yeah, as it comes to
And people
town
from
here.
our part,
Yes, we're going to do a pamphlet and then have a web page probably hosted by one of the historical groups here in the county. And so what we want to do is if we get every group to approve of that, and then we know we can do it, we're then going to have these has done something that should be remembered, are the people buried in the cemetery that are in here, because it'll be coming right past the cemetery here on the south side of town. Is there somebody buried there who's highly remembered, and so we will want to make note of that. So yeah, we definitely would reach out to you all
Okay.
to get ideas of who to include in that. See, it didn't go through Farmersville where I live, because everybody wanted to nominate me to say I'm really the coolest guy in town.
Yeah, yeah. They
Fuzzy
need
vest.
you to, the trash picker up.
By the way, Doug's uncle's sitting back here in the corner.
No way, Doug Krause's uncle?
No,
And
mine.
he was here.
Oh,
Chris's
yeah,
uncle.
sure.
I was at the funeral with Chris.
Oh, really? I'm sorry about that.
It's a great job.
Thank you so much.
So do you need that approval tonight, or?
You don't have to do it tonight, just any time that you want to. We're wanting to try to get all the
You're ready.
approvals
You
done.
might as well do, get it done.
Is there a motion to approve of that section of our streets and of the state highway as part of the Double County Patriotic Parkway?
Yeah, I make a motion to do that.
I'll second it.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Kim? Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Ralph?
It's a pleasure.
I was telling, what's the first name?
John.
John. I was telling John, I said, man, I wish my church board meetings went this easy. Do you all have any other questions for me about things going on in Columbus?
No,
Anybody?
I'm gonna,
we
we
don't know
got
what's
this,
going
and
on.
I'm gonna try to make it easier on these people.
Okay,
See
yeah,
what's
capital
going on
budget.
with that, yes.
Yeah, we are,
Yes.
I think that we're just taking right now ideas.
Sure.
We want to do that for anything in the capital budget, which begins in January, so we're sort of trying to get as much money as possible. to help our communities. How much, does your guys' meeting go on for like 2 or 3 hours? Party, just like all kinds of fun stuff?
Not a lot of fun, no.
If I sneak out,
No,
don't be
please.
offended.
No,
I'm gonna
please,
sit here
Rick.
for a while, but if
Go
I
right
sneak
ahead.
out, it's just, I gotta be back.
Whenever you're ready, go right on. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming, Sean.
Absolutely, great being here, thank you.
Susan, we're ready for you whenever we're ready.
I'll stay right here.
Okay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, the day finally came.
What
We
did
took
we
bids today for the school building
Wonderful.
to remediate and demolish it with some capital bill funds
Absolutely.
that came out of the last capital bill. And the interest was outstanding. We had 27 plan holders. I don't think we've had that many plan holders on anything in our office, to be frankly honest with you. It was rather crazy. We had 13 bids today that we opened at 1:30. They were allowed to bid the remediation part of the school building, which was the asbestos and the universal waste disposal, or they could bid just the demolition of the building itself, or they could put a bid in to do both. So we had some of each. We had some that put in bids for one or the other, some that put in bids for both. And we also had somebody that put in a bid for everything, and one that put in bids for the remediation and the demolition, but it wasn't a combo bid. So it was all over the place. And so needless to say, it's a little difficult or harder than normal because it's not a black and white bid like a lot of ours are. So basically we have quite a few things to look at. The low bid on the building demolition was from Evans Landscaping out of Kentucky for $104,900. The remediation low bid came from Ely Construction out of Delphus, Ohio at $169,900. So, and then you can kind of see as you go on down the list there, Complete Demolition Services bid the demo, but then they also bid the remediation demo as a package at $340. So basically there's a cut, and then there were also some alternate deducts and additions that you can kind of see down there at the bottom. I don't know that any of those are really anything that we are interested in because we can't do any, we have to do crushing if we're going to the dump site. Obviously we need to remove the floor mastic at this point, so 2 and So that's not really an option either. So based on what we have proposed, and we talked with the mayor about this afternoon, is that we would like a few days to be able to call and talk with some of the references of some of these companies. You know, we haven't worked with any of them. The $104,000 price is, you know, pretty cheap for somebody coming out of Kentucky. The couple people that are local were Mikesell Excavating at 162, and M&T Excavating out of Bradford, which is in Dark County, at 187. So 104 coming out of Kentucky's a little low, so I guess we just feel like we need to do some research and we need to make some calls and talk with their references. You know, it could be that they're just looking for a way to keep their people busy this winter. I don't know. But I think that we need to do our due diligence in doing some research on the companies, make sure that they're happy with work they've done in other places that we will contact. So what we talked about this afternoon was having a special meeting to just talk about this, potentially on, I think, Thursday evening was what the mayor had talked about, if that would work for anybody, everybody. And then we'll come back and we'll only talk about this and about how or what we want to award. You know, realistically, the cheapest cost that we're gonna get in this is $275. We have $200,000 of capital bill money, thanks to Representative Smith, that will be very well spent. If we decide we'd like to stay with one contractor to do the whole thing, instead of one contractor that points a finger at another contractor because he doesn't demo all the stuff, or he doesn't remediate all the stuff that the demo guy thinks he's going to, we could look at the second contractor, and his number would be $310. So it'd be a little more expensive, but we would kind of negate some of that finger pointing. So depending on what we find out about Evans Landscaping and these other couple companies there at the top, will probably dictate what we come back and recommend on Thursday, if that works for everybody. Because we just want to be sure that whoever we award a contract to and you sign a contract with, that we're satisfied that they're going to do a good job for you, and we're not going to end up with some kind of a problem with them because, you know, they bid it too low, or they didn't have a good idea of what it was they were supposed to be doing. They were going to be hauling something somewhere that they shouldn't be. So there's just some of those kind of questions that we need to ask to get a good handle on where are they taking this stuff that they can do it for $104,000. So with that being the case, they do all have a bond, so it's not like, you know, if something would happen, we'll still have their bond and we can go back on their bonding company. So it does have a regular bond like we do with all the stuff that we did for you, so that's no different. But we still don't want to get into a situation with somebody that maybe isn't the right guy. So what I would like to do is recommend that you give us a few days to be able to go through their references and talk with some of the people they've done work with and do some research on them, and then come back on Thursday with some options for you as to how we proceed.
That sounds good.
Is there anybody who cannot be here on Thursday evening?
What's the date?
Date would be on the, 7th.
Okay.
I know your Fridays will be better, but on Thursday,
I'm good.
It's fine.
Good.
is there a time that's better for all of us?
What time?
I can do whatever time we're free.
Okay, we can go earlier than normal if you want. 6:30, 7, just somebody say.
6:30.
6:30 on Thursday. How is that all right with everybody?
It's fine.
Mandy, could you call Peggy and let her know, please? And we'll get this advertised. We got time to get a special advertised that we will be talking about this. And what might we also mention at this special? Oh, and we may also talk about leaf pickup. Only because we don't have a real clear schedule, and it might be nice to get that taken care of. Right, but that won't take 5 minutes. The other here is the important part. Okay?
And then in the meantime, we'll need to be thinking about the finances that the village has to, you know, deal with the gap between the 200,000 and 75 or 310. You know, I know we talked
come down this morning?
Well, they're under the park area, so.
Okay, I started to say, I come down this morning and put
We're
them on.
not there yet,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
All right, but we are ready to start committee reports. So, if we could, please, safety.
Police department for the month of October, we handled 163 calls for service, made 31 reports, 7 arrests, 17 citations, and 31 warnings were issued.
Anything else? Anybody have any questions for Chief while he's here?
How was the Halloween distribution? Good? Busy. There's a lot of people. Did you go out to school this year too? Yes. We actually went out, since we changed our Halloween, we actually still kept it the same out there. We went out Thursday, passed out
Oh, good.
350 some bags. Good feedback from there too. Good.
We tried to do a head count in my house. I had people trying to do a head count as they come through. And we figured that we had about 330 kids at my house.
Well, when I saw on Facebook that somebody had come from Dayton, I thought maybe you all were slammed. I was busy.
It was slammed. And it worked out good.
I run out 45.
Well, you know, the best part of it, when you're out, you're done, turn your light off. You can't do any better than that. At least it was a dry, decent night. It wasn't cold.
It worked out good.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Jeremy. Building have any report?
Maybe it's corner fixed yet.
No, the corner's not fixed yet.
Yes, it is.
It's been fixed for about a month.
Yeah, they got to it 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think.
Oh, I don't know, did they get it fixed now?
They did.
I talked to Jimmy about it, he said he'd
I
take
think
care
he
of it.
fixed it the day after the meeting.
Okay,
It's done.
okay.
So that's all done. Is there anything else about the building?
Nope.
Any other buildings? And were we gonna paint the roof or did we get that done? Up there at the bus.
It hasn't
No,
been
we haven't done that.
Probably too late now.
Well, it might be, I don't know.
Yeah, you
We'll
don't want-
wait till spring.
Yeah, you don't want to paint this.
Cold.
Okay, we didn't get that done, so we'll put that on our spring agenda. Streets.
On the streets, we purchased salt for the coming year for the snow removal, $64.38 a ton, at the same price it was last year. The leaves will start to get picked up at the end of this week or first of next week. We'll try to come up with an exact way of doing it like we did last year, where we'll split the village up in half, north one day and south another. We'll determine that probably Thursday, at the special meeting. And Randy Schauer, is that how you pronounce his name? Was brought from part-time to full-time. He starts next Tuesday as a full-time employee because of the absence of one of our employees on the BCA. And he's already working for us on a part-time basis. So we'll move him to full-time and looking forward to working with him.
We'll be here on the 12th.
And I think that's all I get.
I did talk to Amanda Stately, who is Linda Stately's daughter, and lives with her, about the business sign. We know that doesn't need to be out there in front, business parking sign in front of her house. She hasn't had a business for a while. That can be taken down. I asked Amanda, did she think she needed a handicapped parking sign for her mother? They have a very nice driveway, it's right beside the house. She said no, they didn't need it. She always pulls in there to get her in and out of the car to take her on her doctor's appointments, whatever. So that can come down and we don't need to worry about putting anything else back up there. Is there someone else though that needed a handicap sign? Do we need to bring that up? Probably not, you know. Tell me that there's someone. Here, Paul?
119 Pheasant Street.
Okay. But she has a doctor's note that would get her a handicap parking sign. Don't know that even requires a vote. I don't think so.
Probably should be in the minutes, we can vote on it anyway.
Well, is there a motion that we
I make a
apply?
motion, we get her a handicap sign.
It's at
What was the address?
119 Hutton Street.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Mary Jane?
yes.
Ken? Yes. Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Ralph?
Thank you. Lights, anybody have anything about lights, street lighting?
They've been working on them for the last, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe. I don't know.
Have they been in town?
Replacing them, they've been in town, they're still in town.
Okay,
So we're getting them up to date now, we figured out how to get a hold of them.
well, here we go.
Yeah,
Okay. Finance. If you look, did everybody get a copy of this? You have a copy of a credit card policy. It doesn't, I don't believe, have to be an ordinance or a resolution, but the policy needs to be approved. I'm not finding mine.
I don't have one either.
It looks like this. Village of New Paris credit card policy. We needed to adopt one for a lot of reasons, or for auditing purposes and everything else. And we kind of always had one, but it's never been written down. Just hanging on one here for stuff. I'll give it to Mary Jane. There it is. Mary Jane, I'm gonna give you this
Okay.
one, we'll get another one to take. Thank you. Okay, if you want to take a quick look at it, the limits, it lists all the credit cards that we have, the limits set on the cards. It also shows the amount at the top for individual spending limits per item ordered. But these are the cards that we have. And it says they may be used for purchase of gasoline, equipment maintenance and repairs, items ordered on the internet for repairs, and items needed for the garage or office and garage supplies, postage stamps, food when traveling for training, as approved by council. Itemized vendor credit card receipts with the person's name making the expense in the department to be naming the expense and the department to be charged shall be marked on the receipt presented to the fiscal officer. The fiscal officer, who is issued the credit card, is responsible for its protection and custody. The fiscal officer will be responsible for credit card issuance, credit card reissuance. If the credit card is lost or stolen, the fiscal officer shall be notified, and the issuing entity of the lost or stolen card shall be immediately notified to cancel the card. Fiscal officer monthly shall present to the council credit card account transactions detailed from the previous month, which you get with all the other bills and warrants that we see. The council shall review the credit card account details, and the council shall sign an attestation stating the council reviewed the credit card account transaction detail. Fiscal officer employees who use the village credit card in a manner contrary to this policy shall be subject to the following disciplinary actions as deemed appropriate by the council: verbal counseling, written reprimand, suspension, termination, reimbursement to the village for unauthorized expenses. Balance on all credit cards shall be paid monthly by check or electronically. Fiscal officer, at least once every 6 months, must review the number of card and accounts issued and the number of active cards, the account issue, the card and accounts expiration dates, and the cards and accounts credit limits. Fiscal officer or the fiscal officer's designee annually must file a report with council detailing all rewards received based on the use of the village credit card account. And this has been updated as of today's date. Are there any questions or any discussion on this? As I said, it's what we've been doing all along, but we didn't have, I don't believe, a written policy, or if we did, it's become lost
I
over
don't
the
think we
years.
ever had a policy.
Is there a motion to approve the New Paris credit card policy?
So, I think, go and get her.
Ken? Mary Jane?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you. good news.
There's several properties that have been cleaned up. The one on 117 East High, or not East, North High Street, or just High Street.
No, High Street.
It was a repo. Finance company came in and cleaned it up, so we didn't have to bother with that. We're still working on some others. We have several. We sent out, I don't know how many letters. I think we sent out over 30 or 40 letters. Most of the properties have been cleaned up, but we still have some that's fighting us, so we're gonna fight that. And it will be taken care of. It might take a while, but we're gonna get it. That's about all I
Well,
have.
good.
Oh, and here's a copy of what we paid out for the along the old railroad track, which is under our net tool company, $320 for the month. Is that for 6 months? 2 months. And then a place on 208 Copeland Street, $120 in Eagle Edition. And then 101 South Washington Street, $200.
These will be certified to the auditor and placed on the tax bill, is that correct? On the
Yes.
property tax bill. Thank you, Mary Jane.
That's okay.
Appreciate that.
Mary Jane, I just need you to sign that so I can send it to you.
Okay.
Nothing else for sanitation, nobody has any questions?
Here Wednesday. I'll have to come down Thursday because I won't be here. I'll be at the,
You just sign that one.
oh, sign this one. Okay.
Planning, we haven't had any planning meetings and no requests for any, so we can go ahead with that. And does the Board of Public Affairs have anything to tell us this evening?
Nothing else to add, just Patrick's still off with FMLA and recovering at home. No change as far as his status.
Okay. Okay. Everybody keep Patrick in mind. He's had a really rough time. Yes, he has been. Resolution and ordinance. I have nothing.
Oh, I haven't either. I'm still working on sanitation and a couple of others.
You know, I'd like to have that by January so we can start.
Good luck.
You know, if I can help with that in any way.
Oh,
let me
yeah.
know. Because I'd really like to do 3 readings on that one and get it in place for the spring.
I don't know that all of it will be done by January, but
Well,
we do
even in
need that junk
February.
car one.
Even in February. Okay, that'll be a good target date, and I'd be happy to help you. Other things that we talked about as far as resolution and ordinance, the Amish laws that has anybody checked into those?
No,
I did.
but
I
I'm
called.
planning on it.
I called Burlington, and they do not have an ordinance there.
They have nothing.
They have an agreement.
Oh, okay,
They have a verbal agreement.
okay.
That's what the chief of police there said. And he says that most of the Amish are in compliance.
I'm certain that's true, but
And, but he says as far as it being a law that they have to bag their horses or stop and pick anything up, he says no.
Someone cleans it up.
It goes. Their town.
I think we got enough of these guys to do, to tell you the honest truth. I
think
think we ought to keep looking for somebody that does have something.
But it's really, if you pass it, I mean, if we pass an ordinance, then they have to abide by it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We need to keep looking for somebody who has an actual ordinance that we can model from, if that's possible.
Okay, there's another town I'll call. It's Millersburg.
Okay,
They're loaded with Amish.
okay.
So I'll call them and I'll have an answer for you on Thursday.
Well, that'll be fine. We really can't talk about it then.
Well,
but
okay, but I'll,
just, if, whatever you can do, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah.
Good.
The other thing that we had
Can I
was,
help you guys with that?
yes, thank you.
So, I was a real estate agent here in Trumbull County that helped the Mennonites come here and plant a church here. And the Mennonites that came here to plant the church are largely the reason that a bunch of the Amish came down here from Mansfield and that's where most of the Amish that we have here right now came from, and it's where all the Mennonites came from. And there's so many Amish up there that they're going to know who in that part of the world has laws or ordinances for that kind of stuff already.
Okay.
Have you checked with Fountain City, Indiana? Because a lot of local Amish here, they're working with Fountain.
No, I haven't.
No, but, you know, I think we might be happier with an Ohio law than an Indiana. I mean, if they happen, might be.
It's worth checking in to see both.
Sure.
Yeah, I will. I'll check into that. Thank you.
We're not unhappy that we have Amish, I don't want that to, but there
No.
are some things that we want to get ahead of before we have problems. And I'm sure they wouldn't want any problems either, so.
No, it's just when they come through town, they all seem to poop in front of my house.
You'll have to take the timing on the red, green, white, so it's.
I know it.
You won't have to clean up on the patriotic parkway.
Hey, I'll be on that parkway too. Cause I'm on 320.
You oversee sanitation, don't you?
Yeah.
Get out of here. And you're in the department.
I just go by it.
Thanks, Todd, ahead of time.
Yeah, there you go. The only other thing we have is this, banner attachment thing from Dave Power Line. I don't see where we have to pay for anything, Mary Jane, if we don't keep things up longer than 180 days. I think our next step is to go to the chamber and to the Legion, because these are the two main people that want banners or flags, and see if they're willing to switch to the band type things and pay that cost. If they're not, then I'm afraid we're just going to have to do
Well,
that.
that's what I have been working on, but DP&L will not return calls.
No, not too
I haven't had any luck with that.
Well, I think if we get some answers from our local people as to what they're
Right.
willing to do first, and then maybe take it all to them or go online or even just send them a letter. And, you know, somebody might accidentally fall down and read it. But we aren't gonna give up on that, because I'd like to have that ready
I'll get it
before.
done.
No, it's fine. You've got a lot going on, I know. I'm just saying, it might be good to talk to the people who are gonna be the ones with the banners and flags and see if they're willing to pay the cost of doing this, because if they're
Well, I
not.
planned on setting up appointments with the Legion and the Chamber, but I wanted some answers from DP&L, and I haven't gotten that yet, so. But I'm not gonna wait, I'll go ahead and get.
Well, you
permission
know,
from
we
them.
don't know what they're gonna cost or anything else,
No,
so
I
maybe
don't.
they could look into that, or we could, and say, here's what we've got as far as cost of these things. If they're not willing to do it, then we drop the whole thing. You know, we won't have to go take our line, because if they're not willing to comply and help us comply with this, I don't see where we're gonna be able to keep putting up flags and things.
Well, what the thing is with them, they want money for us to put our flags up.
Who does?
They, Power Line, if they're up over 90
If
days.
they're up
or-
over 180 days,
Yeah,
that's
80
6 months.
days. Yeah.
So I think we could have.
They want us to pay them.
Mid-May until well past, Apple Fest, and be okay, I think. You know, and by then they wouldn't want to leave the flags out for the winter anyway, I don't believe, they don't leave them out all summer.
No, they don't.
So the flags wouldn't be a problem. It would just be
Banners that
staggering
stay up.
and who gets what pole, because you can only have one thing on a pole at a time.
We can put our
And
own
I-
poles up.
well, I guess we could, that'd be fun. I'll let you do that. No, but I mean, you know, there are some parameters there that we just have to
I know
work
that.
out. Okay, thank you. Is there
our joint work session meeting with you guys. And I want to start with an apology from our park committee that we should have handled things a little differently, but it was a learning process for all of us from our side, and I'm sure from your side too. Being that on our side, we weren't sure what was expected of us from you guys, and I think you guys on the other side probably weren't sure exactly what we were doing. So that was step one of us trying to bridge this and get us into a better working, cohesive partnership. With that said, we are working on our bylaws currently. We're holding a special meeting that we are going to sit down and do nothing but hammer out each section of our bylaws. And then we will be bringing them to you once we've agreed upon what we think they need to be. And then we'll bring them to the council for approval. We'll give them to you before your meeting, like when we have them done, we'll get them to you ahead of time, so you guys will all have time to go over them, and then maybe they could be approved upon on that following meeting. As of yet, because we were just a group of citizens who were, put together for this committee, none of us had the expertise of sitting on the boards, and, so we're learning as we're growing too, and some people get a little overly emotional because they want things done and they want them done right now, and they're not sometimes calm enough to see the big picture and the long haul of
It
it.
doesn't help your cause.
Exactly.
To have that kind of thing going on.
Exactly. And we've had that discussion amongst ourselves now. And so we're gonna make some changes as far as that goes too. We're gonna make sure that there's better communication between our group and the board. And, we're not trying to come in and butt heads. We want to come in and all work together, and we want it to be as smooth as possible. So, and we don't want to be doing anything that you guys don't want us to be doing either, so we are working on that. We have a question as far as if Susan, if you guys have already voted on this and agreed that Susan is going to be the engineer for our project for the park. Is this for the whole thing? And then will she be at our services? And if she is, are you guys going to cover the expenses for that?
Well, I know she does a lot of work for free.
My first question is, what kind of engineering are you planning on needing? Or do you think you're going to need?
Well,
and is it something that you can't just turn over to us and let us do?
Well, that just depends. As we approach this, we're learning now as we're trying to set up things. And we've decided that we will be setting each part of the park that we're going to assemble will be a project. We're going to compile this project, figure out our ballpark figures. We're taking your advice at our last meeting, and we'll have 3 estimates. We will then turn our project over to you with those estimates, get your approval to one of 2 ways. A, if it's under the $50,000 and we don't have to go through the whole bidding process, then if you give us permission to go ahead and spend the money that we've already raised to do that particular project, then we'll move forward with it. And we'll make that decision with your approval based on what bids we've had come in. If it's a project that's over that $50,000, then obviously we would need Susan's expertise for the bidding process and all of that to make sure that it was something, that was handled in the right way.
Yeah. Well put. What?
Nothing, I'm just waiting. Are there comments, Ralph?
Well, Susan is the engineer for the council, and we have to approve everything anyway.
Correct, yes.
So there would be no need to have Susan as an engineer for the committee unless the committee wants to hire her independently to do whatever you want.
Well, and that's the point I was trying to make right up front. If there's engineering and, that needs to be done, I think it's our job to do it. If we're in don't see, and it's our job to pay for it.
Well, when we get to bigger things, like, it may not necessarily be, now, obviously, we have discussed her use with the basketball court at this point.
Yes.
But when we get to things like splash pad, where we're going to need, you know, probably two separate people, contractors, as far as plumbing and, the cement work to be done for it. So that's something that we feel like the plumbing is something you guys probably will have to
I think that whole
handle.
thing is probably gonna be something we'll have to handle truthfully.
Right, right.
And I explained to the park that whatever gets done up there, whatever is being done up there, is gonna be approved to the council, and then it's gonna go through Susan. This is what I explained to them. And that anything up there that's gonna involve maintenance, Jimmy has to be involved.
True, but we as council have to be involved too.
Yes, but Jimmy will be doing the maintenance part of it.
Right, right.
And I did talk that over with the park committee, and explained that to the park committee. And, I just think the park committee's a good thing. I think it's going good. I think it's going great.
I think it's a wonderful thing, but
Here's
I
a scenario. Here's a scenario.
wait a minute, Mary Jane, you have a question?
I just wanted to say she's on the right track, I feel, communicating and bringing all the decisions here so we can discuss it together
Right.
and go from there.
But when we do the go from there part, are they on their own to go from there?
Oh,
or
no,
do we
we're
take
working
it?
together.
Well, but are we? That's not what was
We
just.
should be.
That's not how it was just explained. If it's under a certain amount of money and we approve it, then they're gonna do it. Now, is that what we want, or do we wanna have that? I'm only asking, you know, I'm sorry.
Well, no, and I agree, but from our side too, we also feel like if we're the ones out there going out and raising the money to do this, and we're the ones doing all the
We
fundraising.
should have some say.
Right, and we don't wanna put the proposal together and bring it to you guys, and then have you guys go, oh, yeah, well, we'll look at this, you know, in a few months. But, you know, we're busting our butt to try to line up these the projects, so that when we get to that point, and we're honing, you know, but when we get to that point where we bring this project to you, and we have it on paper, and we have
Yes.
the totals, and we say, okay, we've raised everything we've already needed to raise to complete this project. Do we have your permission to go ahead? There will be times, there's gonna be some of those projects that are gonna be really small. You know, maybe putting in a sandbox, something super easy, super small, you know, whatever, and that's just a, for instance, we're not even talking about, but if we come to you and you say, oh yeah, go ahead, that's a project that we're not gonna need an engineer, or we're not gonna need that expertise. If it's a project that's gonna be bigger, the splash pad, the community building, things like that we're talking about putting in later, bigger projects, obviously those are going to need some engineering approval. You know, just like the basketball court, when it got to that point where we brought it to you guys and said, you know, this is what we're wanting to do, then Susan had to get involved.
But Susan had to jump in head first herself, because no one ever set up a meeting with Fat Black. And even after the park meeting that we had, our joint meeting, no one called her to set anything up. After a week, we did it ourselves. And I'll tell you, Shell, I'm not so sure he's still gonna do it.
Well, and that's just it. I guess that's where we've dropped the ball in the communication up to this point, is that it was never specified who's supposed to call him, who was supposed to set the meeting up. We were under the understanding that Susan was going to orchestrate setting up that meeting, and so that's where I think there was a miscommunication on that situation.
You know, he was your guy, he was your contractor, you were the people talking to him. We expected you to get a hold of him, see when he could come, not you personally, but whoever had been meeting with him, and then let us know. That just went completely away, and it went completely away twice. It wasn't just that first time. After our park meeting, when we waited to hear something about it, I'm not sure he's even interested in doing it anymore, maybe this spring he'll be interested, but he's a little tired of not knowing what's going on himself, maybe.
Which, yeah, we can see
And
that.
Jimmy is setting up, Jimmy is got some, he's gonna be talking to Kurt again. And I met with Heath
Yes.
and Jimmy at the basketball courts.
Yes.
And we went through everything up there. I mean, he did everything. And I explained that to you guys at the meeting. And he recommended that the asphalt or the courts not be done till spring. And I agreed, Jimmy agreed. And so, the council needs to vote on that and make sure that, we're gonna wait till spring. Okay? As far as the park's concerned, the council needs to vote also on tonight. They need to vote on the waiver thing. And then I was under the impression that the council was gonna vote on, no matter what gets done up there, we were gonna vote on making sure that everything goes through Susan. Now, I got that impression from this council. We were gonna do that at this meeting. And I don't see it on here.
The waiver is on here, the engineer for the park is on here, both things are on here.
Well, but I was under the impression we were gonna vote on these things.
Well, we're not to them yet. We're listening to Shelley right now. The next thing we're gonna do is the waiver form. On your, you see it there?
I do.
Well, we can't vote till we get to it. We're gonna go there.
Okay, all right.
Calm down.
Okay, I didn't get up here to ruffle any feathers.
Quit that.
No, I'm just, I'm fired up about this part.
Well, and so are we, but that's why we need to come together and work more cohesively than we have up to this point, and that's what we're trying to mend. We all started this kind of blindly, and, we were kind of the blind pulling the blind, and now we're kind of coming into some light and working out some of these bumps, and we're sorry we're fractured in front of you all at that meeting. Though we had a little bit of contention within our own group about that decision about the basketball court anyway. And one person got up to speak for the group, which wasn't right. And so he has since kind of been put in his place too, and we're gonna move forward from that point saying, okay, we learned a lot from that meeting. And it's helping us structure how we're going to do things from now on. We'll have in our bylaws how our plans are gonna go for each one of our projects. Our ideas will be written out, we'll get our estimates, we'll bring that information to you and ask to be put on the next agenda for approval of whatever. And so now that we have a game plan moving forward, hopefully we won't have a lot of that.
Because I don't want you to think that anybody here thinks that your input or the hard work you've done, we're very appreciative of that. And that your ideas are something that we want, because it was our intention to get information from the people who live here, from the town people. What were they interested in? Because eventually, if we do have to put a levy on to maintain that park, we want it to be something that they're happy with. We don't want it to be, oh, well, I didn't want that, we did that.
Well, and we do
Regardless,
have,
and we're not planning that right now, and I don't, that probably wasn't a good thing to say.
I get a question. How come you want to start doing your projects?
well, originally, we kind of thought that we were gonna be in a place to be able to laptop the basketball court before the Apple Fest. And then things just kept getting delayed, and then we were learning that there was more of a process to it than us just raising the money, hiring somebody to come out there and put a laptop down. I came in after a few people had already been kind of involved in trying to create the park committee. So, from my perspective, as I came in, there were a lot of things that were just happening real quickly, and some of us started to say, wait a minute, we want to make sure we're doing it right. We're not trying to just run and go throw a laptop out there and have something be wrong with it, come the spring. We wanted to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, and we're, And I don't wanna throw blacktop out there, and there's a lot of us on the committee that feel this way. We wanna be able to see a completed project, you know, I don't wanna just
Yes.
put blacktop down and not have new nets and not have,
I think that
you know.
a project that needs to be done is the school down first before we even move forward.
Well, and we've had this discussion
Yeah.
quite a bit, the basketball court being where it is and that it already existed.
But does it have to be moved due
Right.
to water runoff?
Right, and we,
I don't think
No.
we kind of talked about that, and that was the whole thing about getting Billy involved and trying to see.
I think that's, you know, we can sit here and say we don't think the water will run down there, but we don't know that because we're not experts. When the building goes down, we don't know where that water is gonna go. We don't know what to, you know. I think it's something that needs to be investigated before we jump forward and even put blacktop on that basketball court.
And we're at the point where we agree, we've all come to a consensus that it's not gonna get done before snow flies anyway, so. Us as a committee are trying to, we're gonna go through our steps now, it's gonna be written out in a plan, we're gonna have estimates as to what it'll all cost. We'll see if we have personally raised enough money, which at this point we have, that we, I think, can take it to completion. So over the winter months, we are hoping that we will have this finished, be able to bring it to you, so that we can bring it to a vote early before the spring, so that you can decide, are we ready to move forward with that basketball court with our game plan? Or are we gonna need to wait until the school's completely down? For us as a committee, and all the people we've talked to in our fundraising, we're getting a lot of negative feedback at this point. We've done some pretty big fundraisers already, and people are starting to ask, where's all this money we're raising? They don't understand that it's taking, you know, it's probably gonna be $1 million before we're done with the whole project from start to finish. People don't understand that. It takes a lot, and they think that, like, some people just thought they could run out there and throw a blacktop on there and say we have a new basketball court. It doesn't work that way. So we learned, and we're trying to go back and start at step one the way we should have been doing it all along, and we're trying to do that from here forward. We're hoping that with this process, we'll be able to bring it to you over the winter. You guys can make some decisions on if we can move forward in the spring. We'll be ready to move forward with that first project and get it done to completion. Then we can move on to the next thing. Our next thing on our thing was gonna be the walking track. Of course, we can't do anything about that until that school building is down. So we may look at some other things. There's a thing that the kids play called Gaga Ball. It's a little octagon thing, and it's kind of a kickball in this little thing. And it really is just a wooden octagon shape, you know, and the kids stand in it and kick, you know, throw the ball at each other. And it's very cheap and simple to put together, and, you know, so if we can do little things like that.
I think the idea is, people are giving money and people are attending these things, and I think the committee feels pressured to put up, put up or shut up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They chose the basketball court because it was there, and then it seemed to be, at the time, a relatively simple thing to do. It's not as simple as it seemed at the time.
Right.
And we're finding that out,
Yeah.
but, they had the best intentions. They wanted something there to show that we're serious and this is what where your money's going.
Right.
It's just gonna take a little time, and I appreciate your efforts, all of you, I'm serious. We just need to calm down a little bit over the winter and get some good plans made, and then kick it this spring and summer.
Yep, and that's our goal too. We're at that point where we realize that instead of running full steam ahead, we need to take a couple steps back and get our ducks in a row, bring them to you in the proper way, and then, you know, you guys will have something to approve or not approve. And, go ahead, Nicole, come on up. On that note, I want to thank you and everybody who donated and participated in our garage sale fundraiser, because we made almost $1,100 on that garage sale.
I have a little concern before we move on.
I beg your pardon?
I have a little concern before we move on.
Yes.
being that I spoke out early, when they bring their circle through town, you're not gonna put me on garbage.
Is it
And at
defined?
this point, I'll turn
I
it
don't
over to
know.
Nicole.
I get to do all these committees all over again in January, so
I
we'll
was
see.
just trying to get a heads up.
So I gave you guys the most recent, amount in our account, and today I noticed on the Dayton Foundation, which is a little behind, we did receive a $20,000 anonymous donor. So now with the town account and everything we've raised so far, there's $45,071.09.
That is amazing. That really is amazing. And
You're well, that's great.
So I'm hoping, as the year ends, we're gonna post something on Facebook here soon, posting the link, people that may want to, get a tax write-off, to maybe throw some money in the account before the end of the year. That might benefit us some, and I know there's some other people that are interested, so I wanted just to update you guys on the amount we have in the account. And the garage sale money, like she said, was $1,073, and I just got that money, so it will be deposited and show up here soon.
wonderful.
And one other thing that I have thought about, that I thought, we've talked about, like for the soccer fields, that we would have to possibly get somebody to grade that later. But thinking about it, we may want to, if we have it done, and then we go in after and tear it up to grade it out, will the town community people be upset because we've wasted money to not finish it like we've already like talked about, you know what I'm saying? So we already have it seeded and it's already done. The demolition work is over. And then we come in with an excavator to kind of grade out so we can do the proposed soccer fields like we talked about on the plan. And the community sees that we're tearing up what was already done. Are we gonna have a lot of backlash? Because you know, like when they tear a road up and then we come back in and, or they put in a roller.
Yes.
Yeah, something,
No,
and then we
how
have, but you know what I'm saying, like if we have it all done in April and then we come in May or July or June and we flatten it off and grade it and we pay for those expenses, you know, figure out a way to make it work to use the property, are we gonna have a lot of backlash? And the other question is as we grade that to make the, spot for a soccer field, is that gonna cause different drainage issues?
And those are things that I don't know yet.
So
I
those,
don't think any of
something to
it.
think about, because if we get the work done and then we come in and change it, are we gonna have a lot of upset people? I don't know how much it's gonna change. I know that over by the backstop, that area, not bad, and I don't think it'll be touched, and that we can worry about later, but it's part where the school's at, is my
Much
question.
closer on up to the building.
It almost would be safer if whoever's doing the work knows that that's what the plan is gonna be, and to grade it as great as possible, while the equipment's there. That way we don't have the town member, you know, the community come back and saying, hey, are we wasting money?
Yeah.
Why are we ruining what was just done? Why didn't they think about that ahead of time? So just something to think about while we're working on these final bids.
I think the biggest thing we could do for me is if there's a certain place you want these soccer courts or soccer fields, if you can tell me where you want them and exactly what the sizes.
Well, I gave you
And
the sizes.
Yes, and I did some calculations, I don't know if Jimmy got that back to you, about how many different ones we could put just in the area that we already have designated for soccer
Right.
fields. And if you don't want them there, that's fine, I don't care. But if you want them somewhere different, then I'm gonna kind of need to know, because I'm not exactly sure what that final grade's gonna be. I really don't see it being a lot different than what it is right now.
Well, if you look at the map, it's got the proposed one, so that's
Yeah,
why,
right there.
yes. So that's why I'm just saying, I know that the conversation has been, we'll have to look at that later
Right.
and not now, but I'm just concerned on the community coming back and saying, where are we tearing up?
Well, and it'd be foolish of us if we don't have to tear it up and have to seed it and everything
Correct,
else over
correct.
again, if it's not complete.
I think we need to look at that, and look at that now, so that if that property can't be used for anything else in that area due to the fact that the school's gonna be underneath of it, then we need to have a concrete plan going into this before the demolition work happens.
Yeah, you guys just, somebody needs to let me know where exactly you want these soccer fields at, and exactly what size they are, and how
Well,
many.
if you can just tell us what area is pretty much not gonna have anything on it, because that would be the area that we could use, you know what I'm
I
saying?
mean, as far as,
Community building or a splash pad or
Like
anything
you
like
can't
that.
build
You can't
anything
build it.
foundation wise
Right,
on it. I mean, we can discuss it later if you wanna go over it.
Basically, if you look at the way this was set up the way it was is because, one, it's gonna be difficult to do anything in here that takes any kind of foundation. Because of the fact that you're gonna have buried foundation. And so that's kind of why, you know, there's soccer field here. This was just a big, large area that you could already do soccer in if you
And I
wanted to.
can.
The reason that we put this community building here was two things. One, you can put foundations in here because there's never been anything there. And two, you can take advantage of this parking lot, and you don't have to put a parking lot in because you use the existing parking lot. So that's kind of why that is the way it is. So basically, you know, these things, the playground, the splash pad, they can probably go anywhere you want. The splash pad would be difficult to do in here simply because of all this underground stuff that you're gonna
Right.
have. The water comes in off of Spring Street, so the water that would, you know, that would serve this would be, you know, easily come in here. And I tried to do it so that we're not ripping up parking lots and putting down new parking lots, and we tried to strategically place it so we could reuse parking lots or this or that, grass, you know, in the same places they are to kind of save money, so to speak.
Well, if this is not able to be used, then I think we need to just plan on possibly using that, because I could put a lot of top deals, you know, we could use more, and I could give you more, you know, I could email you some sizes.
Okay, that'd be great.
Look at
That'd be
it
great.
and plug it in, but I think going forward, anything that's gonna involve this area, we need to have it done now as opposed to waiting and then having somebody privately come in and do it for us and give us like a donation on that pavement. You know what I'm saying?
And if you let me know what the sizes are, I think we can go in there and lay them in there through our AutoCAD really easily and try to figure out where they fit in this area. And then what we can do is we'll work with the demolition contractor to try to level that off based on what, you know, what our dimensions are.
Yeah.
Or as to what we need, we can work with them as they do the demolition, because there's gonna basically be topsoil put on the whole thing, and it's all gonna be seeded. So I mean, it shouldn't want this to look like grass when we're done.
Right,
But-
well, that's why I thought I'd say something, because if you guys do it and if we tear it up again, then we're gonna have another community issue.
Well, and that we should have, if we can avoid that, yes, I think that'd be good.
Just give me, I'm gonna give you my card, and
I have
then you just, okay, you email me the sizes, and if you want them up there on that area, I can try to like put them in there, and then I'll put it on like a map, I'll PDF it and email it back to you, you can say, yeah, I like it, no, I don't. Or
That's
talk to
fine.
your committee, and we can go that route, that's fine.
I mean, we get this down now, and like we talked, when we get it grass and seeded, I can see us playing soccer there next fall.
And that would be a
And
great
spelling
thing.
the use of it, and that'd be like the first thing that could happen, because it's not gonna cost anything, I have the goals, I have everything, so.
Perfect.
Okay,
I think that
that's
sounds
all,
great.
any questions?
Good job.
Okay,
Just give me your sizes and we'll be good.
okay.
All right, thank you,
Thanks.
thanks very much. All right, the next question is the waiver form. We may call our insurance company after our meeting when we were asked if they could go on site. The insurance company said you better have a really good waiver form. Our attorney said there's not a good enough waiver form you could make. He was not in favor of allowing anyone into that building. It's dangerous, we know it's dangerous. And so if we say, well, sign this and you go, it's just like we condone that. Now, I didn't have the authority to say, well, don't do the waiver form because that's what we needed. So we got it done anyway. But you all will have to vote whether or not you, I'll tell you what happened. We had a lot of contractors coming who wanted to see inside the building. We refused to let them in. We did allow a couple of our people to go in and take photographs for them to bid this job. Because it's too dangerous for us to put even our own people at risk, but certainly not people who have, you know, that we have no control over. And I'm not in favor of it, but then I don't have a vote. I'm just stating the facts. Jacob Kovach said the same thing. He was not in favor of allowing anyone in there. However, have a waiver form, and if you want them to go in and look around in there, it's up to you, you'll have to vote on it. Is there a motion to allow anyone to go in and inspect the inside of the building?
Well, they've already said they'd signed the waiver, and if they got hurt,
Well, down here, Jane, you know
I
that's
know
not worth
that.
anything.
I know.
I don't see any reason to let anybody, we've got these bids,
Yeah.
demolition bids, and they put these bids out, whether they seen the inside or they didn't see the inside. And the only ones that should be in there, in my estimation, are the people who are going to do the demolition work in the first place.
I'm gonna get out of it, I'm sorry. I will shut up and I'm not
May
saying anything
may I
else.
speak
I
on the
will.
subject briefly? One of the reasons that they requested to go in was not necessarily to see the condition of the building.
No.
What they wanted to do was go in to see if there was anything that we could possibly salvage as far as maybe chalkboards or whatever.
If you see the pictures, there is nothing in that school worth even going in and take
Okay.
down.
Well,
It's junk.
Could we possibly allow them to look at the photographs that were taken, to show them that there's nothing? I mean, otherwise, they have all of the safety gear and, respirators, eye protection, hard hats, the whole 9 yards. But, I just want to clarify, they weren't just wanting to go in
No, we know
to be
that.
looking.
And they made that clear to us when they were here, Shell. They said they didn't know if there were things in there that could be, would have sentimental value or just valuable to whatever. But, Chair will entertain a motion if you want them to have access with the waiver. Someone wants to move that.
I make a motion that nobody goes in. I don't think it's safe.
There's a motion on the floor that we do not allow access to the building for anyone.
Second.
It's been seconded. I'm gonna call the roll, please.
Mary Jane,
No.
Ken, Luther,
No?
You're voting against your own motion.
Oh. Yes, then yes.
All right, let's,
Okay, all right, I didn't understand,
the
okay.
motion stated is that no one be allowed to go into the building.
Okay, yes.
There was a motion, there was a second. If you want to pass that motion, that no one be allowed to go in, you must vote yes.
Okay.
If you are against that, please vote no.
Okay,
Try it again.
Mary Jane,
No.
Ken,
No.
yes.
Luther, Moore,
Yes.
Ralph.
All right.
If they're crazy enough to go in there after being told, then let it happen.
No, I just can't agree with that. I just can't agree with somebody going in.
Well, they're gonna be in there anyway.
But then if they get caught, they can be arrested.
But like Jacob said, now whether or not they would have any leg to stand on actually winning a case, he said you would still have to.
You'd have to
village
defend it.
still is gonna have to defend it.
Yes,
And
you
judge
would.
how much
I
it
understand.
costs
But
to
there are
defend.
pictures inside there, there's nothing in there.
No, I don't think there's anything in there. I don't know that. And I just don't
There
think
isn't,
there's
then why not somebody go in and get hurt?
There, no. All right, so we have decided, now there's one other item on the park agenda, and that is the engineer for the work at the park. Is there a motion that, anything that requires engineering, Susan will do, and it will come to us?
I make a motion.
That's not to say that we can't send it back to you, or whatever. There is a motion that Susan be the engineer for the park projects, and they come to the council if they need engineering. Is there a second to that motion?
Mary Jane,
Now, if you're in favor of this, vote yes. Yeah.
Ken,
Yeah.
Luther,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Ralph.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we've done with the park unless someone else has a question, or are we ready to move on? In old business, we've been talking about our Amish citizens. Is there any enthusiasm for the horse and wagon parking area being made up there on North Washington Street, there by the bridge.
I make a motion that we designate that area for the Amish parking.
And only for the Amish park. I don't think you can park cars and wagons in there at the same time.
Probably not.
I'm talking about the lot, to put the, pitching posts or whatever up there. There's a motion to do that.
Yeah.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Only for the horses from.
Well, anybody else that's gonna come in with a horse, I
You're
guess.
not gonna use that for public parking through the library or the,
I don't see how you can do both.
I don't either,
I mean, if you don't wanna do it, just vote no. But the motion's been made and is it seconded? It's been moved and seconded. Is there roll call?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Do you want them there or not?
Yeah, this is for the Amish you're talking about?
Yes, the parking area by the library.
only, can't use it for anything else.
No.
I've never seen but one car in there around.
No.
With it.
What? In where?
Well, there are girls that do work at the library.
Do they park in
Yeah, they
there?
actually do park in there.
Is there library parking there? You know, I don't know, you guys, we gotta find some place for these people to park. They're going to the bank, they're going to the library. I'm sorry, let's finish the vote. Yes, yes. Luther, how did you vote?
No.
more,
More?
No.
Rob,
I
Okay.
don't mind sharing it, I just don't wanna designate them.
But I don't see how you can share it successfully. You know what I mean?
First come,
Tear it on
first
the road.
served.
Well, you can share it because no matter where you go, and you got Amish parking there, you got cars parking right up alongside their buggies.
That's
They,
the way
they park right out in front of the
Well,
library with their porch and
Could
buggies to go
somebody
inside.
take a look at that, see if we can go down the middle, put the hitching post in the center of it, and horses on one side, and I just don't want to.
And the reason I say that is when I went up to Berlin, and I pulled into like a little grocery market there, I parked between two Amish buggies.
They share the space at Vernon, yeah.
That's true.
Well, is there a possibility of just putting two hitching posts, two parking spots closest to Washington, so they could pull in there, right there with the horse and buggies, and then leave? Because normally when I see cars there, they're not parked at the closest spots by Washington anyway, they're parked the last couple parking spaces down. I mean, there was a whole house there that got taken out, so obviously there would be enough room to put a couple of hitching post spots and then have other vehicles be able to park there too.
Well, then can we look at the into that a little bit closer?
Yeah.
And see what we can do. I appreciate yours.
You've already got a vote, so you're gonna have to rescind that. Somebody's gonna have to.
No, but that vote was to have it only for horse and buggy.
Yeah.
So if we want to look at it for both, we can go ahead and do that.
Right now, they can use it for both.
Well, yeah,
They
you
can,
can.
they can climb up around the railing that's on the creek now, if they wanted to.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have.
Wouldn't have to put
city
posts
code.
up.
Well, I think it might, be a little more like, they might
It
be for
would,
them.
but I mean, the capabilities are there,
Okay.
but there is one vehicle that parks there all the time, and I believe it's a resident in the area.
Well,
That,
let me look into it a little bit and see if we can divide that up somehow. So we can have both of them in there.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's just sitting there right now, and there's not a whole lot going on with it. All right. In new business, anybody else have any old business, anything unfinished? In new business, we have the invoice from our solicitor from June of 2018 until the end of October. The amount of the bill is $2,516.47. Is there a motion to pay this for the last, what is that, 15 months? It's 2516.47. If anyone would like to look at it, I have it, I want it.
move, so move, pay the 25,1647 for the solicitor.
So second to that.
Mary Jane?
Yes.
Kim? Luther?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Rob?
Thank you. Get this paid. And I have no communications. I've already made all of them that I needed to make, I think, this evening. Please remember the special meeting on Thursday at 6:30. We'll be discussing the bids for remediation and demolition of the school, and we also will be discussing the schedule for leaf pickup. Is there any further business? The next meeting will be Thursday, special. Next regular meeting, December 2nd. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?